She left, leaving you with a broken heart. Maybe she ignored you, replaced you, or saw you as just a temporary option. But now she's back, trying to reignite what she burned down. And the question that burns in your mind is this: why? Why does a woman return after causing the kind of pain that silences you? Is it because she regrets it? Or because she assumed you'd still be waiting? Most men never pause long enough to ask that second question, because they're too busy hoping that this time her presence means something real. But let me offer you a truth most men avoid. Hope without truth becomes a leash. And when someone walks away believing you'll stay available, that's not love. That's control. It means she didn't fear losing you. She expected your loyalty to outlast her absence. Her return isn't always about rediscovering your value. Sometimes it's about confirming whether you ever discovered it for yourself. This message isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity, about breaking the cycle before it breaks you again. Because if you don't see the real reason behind her return, you'll mistake familiarity for fate. You'll accept breadcrumbs and call it healing. You'll re-enter the same fire and wonder why you keep getting burned. But not today. Today, we approach this through the lens of Stoicism. A path not for the emotionally desperate, but for the man who's ready to respond with stillness instead of stories, with strength instead of surrender, with truth instead of temptation. So, if this message is already hitting something deep inside you, like this video to anchor that truth. Subscribe to Stoic Station so you never lose your center again, and drop a comment below. 1. If you feel seen by this message. 2. If you have a different perspective. I want to hear it. Let's start this journey now, because what you do when she comes back will either rewrite the story or repeat the wound. 1. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. Most men assume the moment a woman walks away, it means she's fallen out of love. But the truth is far more complex and far more painful. She didn't necessarily leave because she stopped caring. In fact, sometimes she walks away because she cares too much and doesn't know what to do with that weight. When emotions run deep, when vulnerability becomes uncomfortable, when she fears losing herself in the depth of the connection, her instinct might be to pull away, not to end things, but to regain emotional control. Love, for many women, isn't linear. It doesn't always express itself calmly or consistently. It swells in waves, and when it feels too chaotic, too unfamiliar, too intense, she may convince herself that she needs space. But what she doesn't say out loud is the assumption underneath that decision: you'll still be there. She believes that if she ever changes her mind, you'll be right where she left you, still available, still waiting, still wanting her. And that's the hidden wound most men don't realize they're carrying, not just the heartbreak of her absence, but the deeper sting of being treated like a backup plan. Because when someone walks away believing you'll remain an option, that's not love. That's possession disguised as romance. She may have loved you, she may still, but in that moment, her love took a back seat to her need for emotional certainty and her belief that she could pause the connection without losing it. That's not evil, it's human, but it's also deeply revealing. You see, when someone feels safe enough to walk away because they assume you'll never walk away from them, that's not a reflection of their love. It's a reflection of how little they believe in your ability to choose yourself. So no, she didn't leave because the love was gone. She left because she didn't believe you would. And that's the part that stings the most. Being taken for granted, not because you were weak, but because you were consistent. And now, what unsettles her isn't the memory of what you had, it's the possibility that you're no longer there, waiting for her to come back. 2. Fantasy dies in the face of contrast. She thought moving on would feel like freedom, that leaving you behind would unlock something lighter, more thrilling, more effortless, more alive. The early days confirmed it. Fresh attention, new energy, the dopamine of being wanted again. It felt like an upgrade. On the surface, everything looked better, but the truth about illusion is, it doesn't shatter all at once. It decays slowly, like a quiet leak in a ship she didn't know was sinking. It starts with the small things, the way new conversations feel forced, the way compliments land without depth, the way these new men may admire her body but never really see her. That's when the comparison begins, uninvited but unrelenting. She starts stacking the new against the old, the thrill versus the safety, the excitement versus the connection. And without even trying, you start showing up in her mind again, not as a fantasy, but as a reference point she can't recreate. Because here's what she didn't expect: that emotional intimacy can't be replaced with novelty, that the way you listened, the way you saw through her contradictions, the way you held space without asking for applause wasn't common. It was rare, maybe even sacred. And suddenly, her curated reality begins to fracture. The smiles in public don't echo in private. The affection feels hollow. The attention feels loud, but not grounding. And in the silence that follows, she doesn't just miss you, she questions herself. Did I walk away from something I was never meant to lose? So she circles back, not always with remorse, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with calculation. Because if you're still there, still available, still responding, then her fantasy survives. The story she told herself that you were replaceable remains intact. But if you don't react, if she reaches and finds only space, silence, stillness, that's when it hits her. Not just that you're gone, but that what you gave can't be imitated. And that realization doesn't come as regret. It comes as a slow, crushing truth. She let go of something real, chasing something that only looked better from a distance. She thought she was rewriting her life story. But all she did was change the scenery, only to realize that value isn't in novelty. It's in depth, it's in presence, it's in the way you made her feel without even trying. And now, the one thing that kept her fantasy alive, your availability, is slipping through her fingers. And the scariest part? She's not sure how to get it back. 3. The fear isn't losing you, it's losing her grip on you. At first, she didn't fear your silence. She expected it. She thought it was just part of the game, a pause you'd hold for a little while before reaching out, before folding like she assumed you always would. In her mind, you were predictable. Your love, even after distance, still felt accessible. That illusion gave her confidence, not confidence in the future, but in her grip on you. And so she waited, quietly, expecting your name to appear on her screen. But it didn't. Days passed, then weeks, and your stillness didn't soften. It grew stronger. No checking in, no slipping up, no proof that you were still orbiting her world. That's when something in her started to shift. Not out of love, but out of fear. Not fear of losing you entirely, but fear of something far more terrifying. Losing her emotional leverage over you. The ability to trigger a response. To know, even after hurting you, that you would still validate her importance in your life. Because deep down, it was never just about the breakup. It was about the power to interrupt your peace whenever she pleased, to be able to pull you back, even just emotionally, with a glance or a message. But now, that power feels like it's slipping, and it wasn't taken from her, it was surrendered by you, the moment you chose calm over chaos, detachment over desperation. That's what drives the message. The sudden "I miss you," the random check-in, the vague curiosity about your life. It may sound like reconnection, but often it's a test. She doesn't need an apology or a fix. She needs to know if she still matters, if the old pull still works, and that's where your clarity must hold, because what you're receiving may sound like regret, but it could be survival. She's not always trying to come back into your life. Sometimes she's just trying to make sure she hasn't been erased from it. 4. You lost her respect the moment she became your compass. She didn't stop respecting you because you failed. She stopped because you followed. The shift didn't come with a single mistake. It happened in the slow unraveling of your identity. The more you prioritized her moods over your own center, the more she subconsciously began to pull away. Not because you were unkind, not because you weren't good enough, but because she could feel the balance of power start to tip. And that power wasn't something she asked for. But once she sensed it, it changed everything. At first it was subtle. She replied slower, seemed less engaged, offered less warmth. And you, trying not to lose her, gave more. You tried harder. You adjusted yourself to keep the peace, hoping your consistency would earn her closeness again. But she didn't want a man who bent. She wanted a man who stood. And what started as admiration for your strength dissolved into quiet disappointment, because somewhere along the way you stopped leading and started following. You stopped being the anchor and became the echo. And that's when she tested you, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. She created space, pulled back, waited to see how you'd respond. Would you chase? Would you apologize for things that weren't yours to own? Would you try to prove your worth when all she really wanted was to feel your presence without you begging for hers? Most men fail that test. They perform, they overcorrect, they forget who they are just to keep her near. But the ones who don't, the ones who hold the line, who don't flinch, who don't crumble under the fear of losing her, those are the men who rewrite her memory of the dynamic. Suddenly, she's not looking at the same man who once waited on her next move. She's facing the one who reclaimed his dignity, who doesn't need her permission to feel whole. And when that happens, respect doesn't just return, it deepens. Because you didn't win her by reacting, you earned her attention by refusing to be led by it. 5. Your silence became the mirror she didn't expect. She expected your silence to end. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. In her mind, it was just a phase, a temporary retreat before the inevitable message, the check-in, the apology, the emotional unraveling. Because that's what most men do. They react, they respond, they make noise. But you didn't. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You didn't fill the silence with desperation. And that's what caught her off guard. Not your absence, but your restraint. What she thought was going to feel like freedom began to echo in ways she couldn't anticipate. Without your attention, without your emotional presence, she was left alone with something more confronting than anger: stillness. And in that stillness, she had no one to argue with, no one to provoke, no one to soothe her ego, just herself. That's when your silence stopped being distance and started becoming reflection. It wasn't passive, it wasn't punishment, it was clarity, a mirror. And in that mirror, she didn't just see who you used to be, she saw who you've become, a man no longer orbiting her mood, a man who no longer waits for her return to feel worthy. And that realization didn't create guilt, it created gravity, because now what once felt predictable has become unknown. And in the space where she thought she still had control, all she finds is a version of you she can no longer reach. 6. Most men fail when hope returns. When she finally comes back, whether it's a message that says, "I miss you," or a sudden reappearance in your life, it doesn't feel like a warning. It feels like relief. Like maybe this pain is finally over. Like maybe, just maybe, everything you hoped for is being restored. But this is where most men fall. not because they're weak, but because they mistake her return for resolution. They confuse her presence with clarity, her attention with intention. And in that mix of hope and emotion, they open the door too wide, too fast. They respond immediately, they validate her again, they pick up where things left off as if time and pain have no consequence. But here's the truth most don't want to face. She didn't come back for comfort. She came back for confirmation. Confirmation that you're still waiting, that you're still emotionally available, that even after being hurt, you're still the man who can't let go. And once she feels that energy, once she senses that she still holds power over your center, something subtle inside her starts to shift. The tension disappears. The curiosity fades. What was once magnetic becomes expected, predictable, and she may not even understand why, but she starts pulling back again. Because no woman truly respects the man she walked away from if he remains unchanged. If he's still standing in the same emotional space, still handing over his heart without question, still reacting as if her return is redemption, not responsibility, then she'll feel it. And she'll lose interest. This is where the real test begins. Not hers, yours. When she reaches out, your job isn't to prove how much you care. It's to measure how much you've grown. Pause before you respond. Observe her energy. Ask yourself, is this accountability or curiosity? Is she returning to rebuild, or just checking to see if the door's still open? Because the man she left behind would have answered instantly. But the man she respects now, the man who values his peace, his time, and his healing, knows better. He doesn't slam the door, but he doesn't swing it wide either. He stands at it, steady and calm, asking himself the one question that changes everything. Does her return deserve my presence, or just my silence? 7. Not every return deserves a welcome. When she reaches out again, it's tempting to believe the story is finally finding its way back to a happy ending. That maybe the silence worked. That maybe she's changed. That love is being restored. But this isn't the time to fall back into old rhythms. This is the moment that defines who you've become. Because your role now is not to prove how deeply you still care, but to protect everything that pain has taught you. You don't owe her explanations. You don't need to revisit the history she walked away from. Your silence already spoke volumes. Your absence already carried weight. What matters now isn't the emotion she brings. It's the intention behind it. Is she returning with clarity, accountability, and a willingness to rebuild? Or is she just testing the waters, looking to see if your heart is still where she left it? This is where most men shrink. They see her message as an invitation to relive the past instead of an opportunity to redefine the future. But the man who's rebuilt doesn't flinch. He doesn't perform. He doesn't rush. He observes. He listens. And above all, he filters. Because not every apology deserves entry. Not every return deserves celebration. Not every woman who regrets deserves the man you've become. She isn't entitled to your new self just because she knew the old one. If anything, she must rise to meet you now. She must show, through consistency, not charm, that she understands what was lost and why. That she's not here to reclaim what was easy, but to honor what's been rebuilt. And if she doesn't, if her energy is still vague, her actions still unclear, her words still floating without depth, then the answer is not revenge, it's not anger, it's not even resistance. It's calm detachment. You don't need to push her away, you simply don't invite her back in, because the man who's done the work, who's healed with intention, doesn't measure success by who returns, but by who he no longer needs to wait for. That's the mark of evolution. Not that she came back, but that you no longer bend just because she did. Let me talk to you man to man, not as someone who's been through your pain, but as someone who's seen what happens when you finally stop chasing clarity from someone who gave you confusion. You were consistent, present, committed, and that became the very thing she counted on. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she believed you wouldn't. But you held your center. You chose peace over pursuit, and that changed everything. You see, most men spend their energy trying to decode her silence, justify her leaving, or prepare for her return. But the wiser man, the evolved one, knows the real question isn't, will she come back? The question is, will I still be the same man she left? Or will I become the one who no longer waits? That's the turning point. Because this journey isn't about revenge. It's not about indifference either. It's about self-respect, about clarity, about standing still not because you're paralyzed, but because you've anchored into something she didn't expect, your own worth. And when she does return, and she likely will, it's not your job to reopen the past. It's to measure her against the man you've become. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every apology deserves re-entry, and not every return deserves a welcome. Because the goal was never to make her regret losing you. It was to make sure you never forget who you found when she did. If this message stirred something deep within you, if it grounded a truth you've been needing to hear, then like this video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and drop a comment below. I no longer wait, I evolve. But don't stop here. Your next step is already calling. The path forward is right in front of you. Tap the video on your screen now and keep moving toward the man you were always meant to be. Strong, steady, sovereign. Keep going.